consideration. I want to be honest, this is difficult, but we will get through this storm and we will deliver the strong and sustained growth that can transform the prosperity of our country for generations to come.
Detectives say the prime suspect in the murder of 19-year-old Leah Croucher, who went missing 3 years ago in Milton Keynes, killed himself in April 2019. Leah was last seen in CCTV footage in February of that same year. Thames Valley Police launched a murder inquiry after finding human remains and Leah's personal items in a house that Neil Maxwell was said to have been working at. Maxwell had previous convictions for sexual offences against women and girls. Head of crime Ian Hunter says Maxwell was a suspect in another crime at the time he killed himself.
Maxwell has previous convictions for sexual offences against women and girls and was wanted in connection with a sexual assault in Newport Pagnell in November 2018. He is highly likely to have known that he would be returning to prison if he was arrested and convicted.
The National Gallery in London says the Vincent van Gogh painting targeted by climate activists today is now back on display. Two Just Stop Oil campaigners threw cans of tomato soup over the sunflower's portrait in protest against fossil fuels. They then glued themselves to the wall. They've since been arrested for criminal damage and aggravated trespass. The Met Police says the painting was undamaged as it's behind glass. The President of Ukraine is accusing the International Committee of the Red Cross of inaction in upholding the rights of Ukrainian prisoners of war. The criticism follows the death of more than 50 Ukrainian POWs in July due to an explosion at the Olenivka camp in Donetsk. Both sides have blamed each other for the blast. The Red Cross has previously tried and failed to obtain access to the camp. However, President Zelensky says they must try again.
There is Evlenica, in fact, a concentration camp where our prisoners of war are kept. Access to them must be provided, as it was agreed. The Red Cross can make it happen, but you have to try to make it happen. Ukraine is ready to facilitate this. The mission of the Red Cross can work based on the example of the IAEA mission, but it requires leadership. Conscientiousness is required.
Staying with international news, and in the United States, 5 people, including an off-duty police officer, have been shot dead in North Carolina. The shooting happened in Raleigh, near a popular trail that runs through part of the city. At least 2 other people, including a second police officer, were wounded. Police say the suspect is a 15-year-old boy who's now in a critical condition in hospital. And some news just in the last few minutes. Harry Potter and Cracker star Robbie Coltrane has died. In a statement, the actor's agent said he'd passed away earlier today. The Scottish-born Coltrane won 3 BAFTAs for his portrayal of Fitz in the 90s TV drama Cracker, but he'll probably be best remembered for his role as Hagrid in the Harry Potter films. He was 72 years old. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Back now to Dewbs & Co.
Hello there, back to us. Right, we're with you right through till 7 o'clock this evening. Keeping me company here in the studio, we've got the Labour Councillor Pamela Assad and Emily Carver from the Institute of Economic Affairs. And you know the drill by now, don't you, on Dewbs & Co? What's on your mind tonight? Are you a little bit like me right now? I want to, if it wouldn't hurt, I would headbutt my desk. That's how I feel. I just want to bury my head in my own hands and only peek through my eyes for the rest of the day, well, the rest of the year probably at this rate. Are you feeling a little bit like that? Are you sitting there going, yeah, we've got new change, this is what we want, let's drive forward? Are you maybe sitting there thinking, give Liz Truss a chance, what's the matter with you all? Whatever you're thinking tonight, tell me. You can get in touch with me on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email address, or you can tweet me at GBNews. Lots of you have been getting in touch already. Jackie says, Michelle, I'm with you. I'm not surprised your head wants to drop into your hand, she says. I absolutely despair. She's quite strong on Jeremy Hunt. She says Jeremy Hunt means it's all over for the Tories and possibly even the UK. Crikey, is it that bad? Who's this? Alex says, Michelle, I'm almost 64 and I have finally given up on politics. It is disastrous. All 650 MPs in Westminster are useless and I don't trust any of them anymore. We should give up on them all. And then, Alex, in capitals, you write, no more voting for me. Wow. Anyone else feel like that? Do you connect with Alex's view there? Get in touch and let me know. Let's face it, though, it has been quite a day of it, hasn't it? Lots of rumours. And I've got to be honest, this is one of the things that annoys me in politics, sometimes in the media as well, because it's all just constant speculation, constant relentless, isn't it? Rumours, 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 journalists absolutely loving it, the political journalists. This is their field day, and today they must feel like all their Christmases have come at once because the thing that they've been pontificating about for ages finally happened. Liz Truss sacked Kwasi Kwarteng, and our new Chancellor has been named as Jeremy Hunt. We all know by now about this not-so-many budget. We've got another U-turn today as well. One of the corporation tax, remember, it was planned to go to 25% from 19%. They changed that. Well, today they've changed it back again. Emily Carver, where do you stand on all this?
I've got my head in my hands as well. I mean, just on that U-turn on the corporation tax, that is very, very significant. That was one of the big policy announcements in that mini budget. The idea was that raising corporation tax at the time of when we were potentially going into a recession would be disastrous for businesses and families and so on. And now they're backtracking on that and it's going to be up to 25%, which makes us less competitive as an economy. Liz Truss is in a very, very difficult position. She didn't do the groundwork before she announced this mini-budget, before she had her Chancellor announce this mini-budget. I do feel for Kwasi in a way because it does appear like he's been thrown under the bus a little bit because they were very much a duo. They came as a team. They were a package to the nation and she's just chucked him because the mini-budget went down so badly.
Did you see, there was an interview the other day, and sometimes I have to say, I don't really like the way that many journalists perform, but I was watching Liz getting interviewed and the journalist was saying, do you trust your Chancellor? Do you trust your Chancellor? And she was kind of going about the houses with her answer. And I was yelling at my screen saying, just say yes, what's the matter with you? And even if you don't, goodness sake, just pretend you do, just to like move on. And she couldn't just say yes. And I couldn't quite understand why not. Because then all you're doing is you're opening yourselves up to all this speculation and all this rumour mill stuff. And then I thought, and anyway, never mind that. Why wouldn't you trust your Chancellor? You've only just come out with your mini-budget. What's going on?
I know, it's bizarre. And I think this is one of Liz Truss's perhaps fatal flaws, although I'm still hoping that somehow they can turn it around for the sake of the country, because I think the last thing that the Conservatives need and the country needs is yet another Prime Minister, and I don't think there's a massive appetite. Well, there probably is among some of the public, but for another general election at a moment of crisis would just be, I mean, a bit too much news, a bit too much chaos. But I think Liz is in a very difficult position and it's her own fault. She didn't get her own team on side. And how on earth are you going to get the public on side?
Good question. And in a second, I want to come back to you specifically because I want to get your view in terms of whether or not they should have been U-turning in the way they have. But before I do that, Pamana Assad, the Labour Party, you guys, I want to call you the opposition, but sometimes it feels to me like half the Tory party are the opposition in the first place, and they shouldn't be, but notwithstanding that, the official opposition, you must feel like all your Christmases have come at once.
Well, no, because we're seeing people suffer and struggle across the country. I mean, there's people who've had mortgage applications cancelled, people's pension at risk, you know, people struggling to heat their homes, put food on the table, pay their rent, businesses struggling. So I think that a lot of people wanted this to work, but it clearly hasn't worked, and which is why Liz Truss has to U-turn. And we've seen so many U-turns. So in July we had Rishi Sunak as the Chancellor. In August we had Nadeem Zahawi. In September we had Kwasi Kwarteng. In October we have Jeremy Hunt. I mean, it feels like to me that the Tories are throwing anything at the wall and seeing what will stick, and nothing is sticking and nothing is working. And so for me, I want to see a general election, because I don't think this can continue. I don't think that us changing Prime Minister, us changing Chancellor is going to work anymore.
So you want
because
more
I'm fed up.
instability?
Yeah, I want stability. No, I want stability.
A general election is going to be more instability.
No, I think a general election will actually get people who... Well, it will allow people to vote for who they actually want in office, people who they trust, people who they can see that will put a proper, sensible economic policy in place. And I believe that the Labour Party has shown that they can do
Well, we're going to come to that, because before the end of this programme, I do want to look at what is next for this country. Should it be a general election? So do let me know your thoughts on all of that. Honestly, I do. I feel like I want to do a lot of groaning tonight. But Emily, specifically, let's bring it back to this mini-budget, the U-turns. First and foremost, I guess, do you think that she should have sacked Kwarteng? Was that the right decision or the wrong?
I think she was stuck between a rock and a hard place on this. The mini-budget went down very badly with her own party and, of course, with the financial markets. Whether that's fair or not, whether there was a lot of fair or not, or whether there was so much hysteria in the media that it was just crazy. And sometimes I think our country is ungovernable, because it seems that the government has to U-turn on absolutely anything that's remotely controversial, which I think a lot of people in this country are fed up of. It does sometimes feel like we're governed by lobby journalists. And I don't think I'm alone in thinking that at all. And the way that they were so outraged that they couldn't put more and more questions to the Prime Minister, essentially asking her to resign, does infuriate me somewhat as well. But was she right to sack Kwasi? I personally think it looked quite callous. I can see why she's promoted Jeremy Hunt. Her hope must be that he'll help unite the party behind her. She's reaching out across the divide within the party and hoping to steady the ship in that way. But Jeremy Hunt isn't so popular when it comes to Conservative members, to their supporters. So either way you go, it's looking pretty grim.
And what about this U-turn on the corporation tax? Do you think that it was right to U-turn on that?
No.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't
think that was
It's
right?
not a pro-growth strategy if you hike up corporation tax as you're going into a recession. That's just madness.
Why do you think it's right?
I think it's right because I think what's been proven now is that this theory of cutting corporation tax in order to get growth is proven wrong. We've seen that over the last few months and the last few weeks.
Yeah, but hang on a second, because the conditions for growth haven't exactly been optimum, have they? And this is one of the things that I will say in defence of this Tory government. Whilst we've had the Tories in for a very long time, and people, I know, you'll be shouting at me at home, you'll be going, Tories have been in for over a decade. To me, they've never really had a chance to get going because... First of all, you've had a coalition, you've had things like Brexit, you've had like massive pandemics, you know, you name it. We're now, if some people have their way anyway, we're pretty much tiptoeing blindly, if you ask me, into a war. So it's hardly like being the best conditions to sit there and think, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a brand new business, or I'm going to change where my headquarters is, or whatever it is. And
that's what the government was expecting with the cut in corporation tax, that this trickle-down economics was going to reach...
No, that's not what a cut in corporation tax is about.
But that is what she set out in her speech right at the start about the mini budget, where Kwasi Kwarteng was talking about this. This trickle-down economics doesn't work, and you know, if the government...
No one ever talks about trickle-down economics apart from the left. It's more of a slur. It's about creating conditions for economic activity.
If the Tories knew that these weren't the right conditions to test this theory, then they shouldn't have done it. I don't understand why they decided to do this at this time, in this moment in time, when we have a war in Europe, when we are on the brink of a recession, when people are facing a cost of living crisis. Why do it now then?
Because they're trying to stimulate that growth. They're trying to encourage. They're trying
This theory has been disproven right now.
May I just say that I think it's also worth remembering that the biggest spending pledge was not tax cuts. It was the massive energy price package, which Labour supports pretty much. Apart from, you know, some of the terms and conditions are different, but it supports that massive spending pledge. Labour will never, ever tell you where they would be willing to cut spending. So I think this idea that they're fiscally prudent is just for the birds. Keir Starmer's been talking about how everyone's mortgages have gone up by £500 since the mini-budget. That's since 2020.
No, because
that figure. Full fact, have checked it. That's since 2020. So I'm sorry, but just as the Conservatives...
mortgages rejected because of the former Chancellor...
Regardless of this mini-budget, which I'll say the reaction has obviously been appalling. There's no denying that. But
reaction or
interest rates were on their way up regardless. The US hiked theirs up by 0.75 of a percentage point. We only did it by 0.5. People were expecting it to go higher.
Right at the top, all this theory, people on the ground just want to know how it impacts them and their lives. And if you see your mortgage going up, if you see your cost of living rising, you're going to think, this mini-budget is not working for me. I don't want this government in place.
Of course. And that's where Liz Truss massively failed in translating her, talk of supply-side reform and pro-growth agenda. She didn't translate it into ordinary language that ordinary people get, and people care most about wages and prices and their standard of living. I completely understand that, but that doesn't mean that the economics behind it was flawed in terms of where the corporation tax
was completely shambles, and I think that this U-turn shows us that the government doesn't have a proper plan on how they're going to actually help people's ordinary lives. I don't want to have people crying on the phone to me saying that they now can't afford a mortgage or they're having to refinance. There's 30,000 people in Harrow, where I live, where I'm a councillor, who have mortgages and have loans to buy their homes, and they're going to struggle. They're really going to struggle.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
Struggle to pay their mortgage, pay their general day-to-day living costs.
Are you pinning all that on the Tories?
What I'm saying is this mini-budget didn't help.
No.
This mini-budget made it worse. And that's why this changing of Chancellor, this changing of the Prime Minister, it's just not going to work for the long term.
But then to Emily's point, which part of the mini-budget did you dislike so much? Because I can't help but notice a lot of the criticism about this mini-budget only focuses on a couple of points. It only focuses on the 45p down to 40, and it only focused on the corp tax. The point that Emily's making is there were huge other measures in this, so whether it's helping everyone else with their energy bills, apparently that's OK money, whether it was reducing the lower tax threshold, that's OK money. To me, it did seem that the bits that people had a problem with were the elements that have a susceptibility to envy, if you know what I mean. So more, look at the high earners, let's go for that bit. Let's go for those big fat cap corporates, let's go for them.
The government's saying that they're struggling to get income, they're struggling to find the money to pay for things, and then they're cutting corporation tax, cutting the 45p.
They're not cutting it for
tax.
fun. It's because they think that it will bring in more revenue.
I mean. Here's the thing: the IMF wouldn't make a comment on the UK's economic policy if it wasn't detrimental to the UK and to Europe.
The IMF has no business getting involved in a mini-budget.
The Bank of England wouldn't need to intervene twice in the UK economy to stabilise markets if the policy by the Conservatives was the right one.
The Bank of England allowed inflation to spiral, and it's now that we're going to witness hikes in interest rates quicker than we'd hoped, when they should have been doing it incrementally for a long, long time. They were asleep at the wheel. It's one of the reasons why people are going to struggle to pay their mortgages, but that's because we have inflation. And that's the only lever they can pull.
If we want to bring the IMF into all of this, a couple of days ago, the IMF was telling other central banks to raise interest rates quicker. They were saying to central banks that you're not raising interest rates quickly enough. They was concerned about things like wage price spirals. So we can't just call one side of the IMF out without kind of, if we're going to factor in IMF warnings, those vacations, then we should factor them all in.
When have we ever? I've never been involved in this where I've seen the IMF put out a statement about the UK government's economic policy. Like, it's unprecedented. I'm shocked that even happened.
But my viewers will be writing in or shouting at the tellies or something and asking, what was the IMF intervention at the end of the last Labour government?
Was there?
Yeah, I think there was, wasn't there? You are...
I don't know.
The IMF has intervened. The difficult thing, and I'm sure some of your watch viewers will write in, is that the IMF is not without its own politics. If you look at the mini-budget, which we've now seen has been a car crash for many, many reasons, out of Liz Truss's control as well, you'll see that it was breaking the status quo. It was saying we don't want to stick necessarily to a high tax, high spend economy. And that change is going to upset much of the establishment. Now, she didn't go about it in the right way. We've seen evidence of that. But just because the IMF decides to stick its nose in a sovereign nation's...
What about the Bank of England?
The Bank of England has got things wrong over the course of the past few years.
So what would your
We've kept interest rates historically low for many, many years. I think this mini-budget was the straw that broke the camel's back and has been a catalyst for a change in the way our economy is going to work in terms of interest rates and cheap money.
And the Bank of England, by the way, essentially, you could argue, I'm oversimplifying it, I get that, but essentially they have one job, to manage inflation, to keep it at the target of 2%. And even when it became evident that that inflationary activity was going way beyond 2%, they were too slow to act.
Well,
so some would say, actually, that they should have acted quicker, and now they're just playing furious catch-up.
Well, they have had to intervene twice now, and I think that in itself is quite shocking. And I think what we need to just see is a government that can actually secure people's economic finances, their livelihoods in this country, because there's people struggling and they don't want to struggle just to live.
I think we're forgetting what we've gone through in the past couple of years. We've had a global pandemic, supply chains, large swathes of our economy were essentially put on ice. No, I'm saying that's why we've got inflation, because we pumped huge amounts of money into our economy. We told people that they could stay at home and essentially be paid by the state. We printed money. Inflation, that is why interest rates are now going up.
Yeah, and we need a government that can actually put policies in place to bring inflation down. And the government's idea is to cut corporation tax in order to do that.
Well, the idea was in order to put money back into people's pockets. If you look at the energy package, for example, I mean, that's more and more spending to try and keep people... Well, it's the biggest spending in that budget by far. You've got 45...
Clearly it hasn't made a difference to people's lives, so it's clearly not working then.
There's nothing that the government can do to tackle inflation immediately. The lever that the Bank of England has is to raise interest rates, and they've done it too slowly.
What the government shouldn't have done, though, is announce this mini-budget and made things worse.
Well, I agree with you that they announced it in a terrible way, and that the sequence of events has been stunningly bad for the government.
Let me, because I need to go to a break in a second, and when I come back, I want to focus in on Liz Truss as well and what she should do next, what we think is going to happen there. But let me just briefly ask you this. One of the things I found quite a massive contradiction in the appointment of Jeremy Hunt is that today we've rode back on the planned reduction of corp tax back up to 25%. But Jeremy Hunt was someone that was campaigning to reduce corp tax. So how does that work?
Yeah, I think that he once campaigned for it to be 15%.
He did.
So he clearly values...
By the way, I think at one point about 12.5.
I think he clearly values or accepts the idea that high corporation tax rates aren't beneficial for the economy. And I don't like this idea. I think people think, particularly on the left, that corporation tax is only for those big fat corporates with thousands of employees like BP or Shell or whatever. It affects small and medium-sized businesses as well. It's a tax on profits. Taxes, you don't just tax a company. It means either higher costs, fewer people working in there.
You actually look at business rates then, if you want to actually help small and medium businesses.
I agree, business rates need reform.
But yeah, business rate. And
but we're talking about corporation tax, though.
Business rates. But you're saying that would actually help small and medium businesses. What I'm saying is, no, it wouldn't. And what would actually help is removing business rates or reforming business rates.
Yeah, but a bit of both. All organisations pay corp tax.
Yeah, but you're saying that...
But the idea of reducing corporation taxes is to encourage economic activity, which then could and will likely bring in more revenue in the longer term, because as you expand GDP, we've been stuck in a situation where we've had stagnant growth for many, many years. One of the reasons behind that is that we've had the highest tax burden for 70 years. And that is not sustainable. You can only tax people so far without it having an impact on revenue.
Why would you try and test that theory right now in this current situation?
To try and
the
stimulate
cost of-
growth.
But clearly it hasn't worked.
The worry was
Clearly
that they were
this
heading for
theory
a
has been
recession.
proven wrong.
Well, there you go. What do you make of this U-turn business today? What do you think of Jeremy Hunt? I'll always remember Jeremy for his love of zero COVID strategies. I mean, goodness gracious me. Right, I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I want to focus in on some of your comments at home. You've been getting in touch in your droves, and I also want to focus on Liz Truss. Hey, what do you think is going to become of her next? What should become of her next? Did you see that press conference, by the way? She kept it very short and snappy, much to the annoyance of many journalists. Made me smile, though, so it did. Right, I'll see you in 2.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company whatever you're doing until 7 o'clock this evening. Keeping me company here in the studio, we've got the Labour Councillor Pamana Assad and Emily Carver from the Institute of Economic Affairs. We've just been getting into our new Chancellor, whether or not it was the right decision to even have one. 38 days. That's it. That's how long Kwasi Kwarteng was in that job. As Pamana has been pointing out, we've had 4 chancellors since 2019. Goodness gracious me. Where do you stand on it all? Lots of you, I have to say, coming through, you're quite similar to me at the moment. You do feel a little bit in despair of it all. Lots of it feeling out of control. I think, Pamana, you was just saying as well, lots of people are genuinely worried at the moment. And you're absolutely right. Lots of people really are. Who's this? It's just written in. Bruce. I'm a lifelong Conservative voter, having ousted Boris Johnson in the most despicable manner. He says, is something that has really damaged the Tory party even going forward. I'm just reading your message, actually. It's quite a long one. You're saying Labour will easily win a general election if there was one tomorrow, and that's coming from a lifelong Tory voter. Goodness me. What a state we found ourselves in, don't we, everybody? Right, should we focus then on our current Prime Minister? Part of me says that with a bit of a daft grin on my face, because I just think it is now ending up in such a ridiculous, ludicrous situation. Did you see her press conference this afternoon? I think I've got a bit of a clip of it, actually, to show you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Prime Minister, you going to say sorry? Prime Minister.
Yeah, that is the clip that I chose to show you out of that 8-minute press conference, and I'll tell you for why. What annoyed me in this press conference today, Emily, The most rumoured about press conference, you know, we had front page newspapers today saying Kwasi's not going anywhere. Then, of course, it became apparent that, yes, he was. The press conference was very short and sweet. It was about 8 minutes long. She was basically saying, linking it to her childhood, that's why she wants all this growth. She wants high wage, good jobs, etc., etc. But what caught my attention most, I don't know if it's a good thing or not, was the end. Because she got asked questions, I think it was 4 questions. Pretty much all the questions said the same thing, quite frankly. And I don't blame her. If it was me, I think I would have walked off as well, because they were all just the same old questions. Basically, I'm paraphrasing them, but it was, don't you think you should resign? When will you resign? Don't you think you should say sorry? And even as I just played you then, when she was wandering off the set, they were still going, don't you think you should say sorry? I bet she gets to the back and just sticks her 2 fingers up and puts her fingers in her ear and I don't know.
I mean, I must say, lobby journalists, they're doing their job, but they are like hyenas.
Are they? What's their job?
They're like hyenas. Well, their job is to get headlines.
And see,
at any cost. It's not really to find out, you know, it's to find out, they find out gossip, they find out rumours so that they can write up their headlines. But the way they sometimes behave, I mean, at Conservative Party conference, Jacob Rees-Mogg was walking along. You should see them, you know, the likes of Beth Rigby with their microphones trying to get something out of them. I mean, it really makes you feel like squeamish. May I say one thing? Labour had to go to the IMF cap in hand in 1976 for £4 billion because they trashed the economy, because a lot of people have been texting me saying, what on earth? Well, it's true, and it's something that I should have said.
But that's the point I made earlier on when I was saying to you about the IMF, and I was saying that my viewers, I do know you a little bit by now, guys, and I know that you would have been writing in saying, well, hang on a second, we're talking about IMF, but what did the IMF have to do at the end of Labour? As you all know very well, it didn't end well. Anyway,
but on the Liz Truss stuff and that press conference, what can she do? What can she do, really? I do believe that she passionately thinks that a growth strategy for this country is what we need, and I agree with her. We do. We've had stagnant growth in this country, and that's why we've had stagnant wages. You don't magic wages out of nowhere. They come from building a strong economy. That is just how it works. And you need a strong private sector in order to fund our public services that all of us rely on. And she wanted to make reforms, you know, supply-side reforms, which means essentially allowing things to be built, allowing us to progress. She wanted good things, and I believe she feels passionately about that. But as I said before, went about it the wrong way.
So just very quickly, because I want to bring Pamela in, should she stay? Or, as all of those ridiculous journalists was basically shouting at today, do you think she should resign?
I mean, it's looking more and more untenable for her to stay, particularly as she sacked her right-hand man, Kwasi Kwarteng. But then another leadership election. I mean, this sounds boring now, but I didn't want Boris to go.
Emily. Right, so that was not a brief answer. So should she stay or should she go? Come on.
I don't know. I don't know.
What do you think she should do? Stay or go?
Go, obviously. I think that we need a general election and we need the people to tell us who they want to lead. I think it's as simple as that. I don't think that
isn't there a part of you? Isn't there a part of you, Pamana? Well, you've just been telling us about people in your ward. Is that the right phrase? Your ward?
Yeah, my ward, yeah.
So people in your ward, and they're struggling, understandably.
Yeah.
Many of their mortgages will be coming to an end, and they need to get new ones, whatever. A lot of people are very worried, and I get that.
Yeah.
So surely, for all those people, there's nothing worse than uncertainty. If you know what the future looks like, even if it doesn't look that great, if you know what's going on, you can plan for it, you can make decisions, you can budget, you can do whatever it takes to try and navigate your way forward. The thing that is surely the most anxiety-inducing is not knowing what it is that you need to contend with. So surely there must be a part of you that thinks the best thing to try and help the guys that you're mentioning is to bring some stability, to bring some certainty, to bring a clear way forward instead of more uncertainty, surely.
I don't think a general election means more uncertainty. What I do think is that people looking at this government don't trust this government with their economic policies anymore. They don't trust that they're going to actually see a difference in their lives or their lives are going to get better. I would love for the Conservatives to come out with a policy that actually helps people who live in Harrow, people who live all across this country.
Like what would your dream policy be?
My dream
for
policy
them to come up with?
Well, something that would help people with the cost of living crisis.
But they have done that. They've just done that with the
energy. It's not enough.
thing.
I don't think it's enough.
Where do you think this money comes from?
But here's the thing.
So you want to tax
you talk
the wealth
about the
creation?
IMF intervening at the end of the Labour government, but you don't remember that in 2008 there was a global economic crash. We talk about circumstances right now not being great for these policies, but in 2008 there was a global economic crash, which is probably why the Labour government had to go to the IMF.
No,
I don't know.
I
haven't looked at the specific example, but if you're talking about the 70s, that's a very long time ago, and it's a total.
No, but it's quite interesting for this comparison.
Liz Truss continues to talk about, oh, when I was growing up, I didn't see growth in my area. She was growing up in the 80s when Margaret Thatcher was in power. So I want to understand how that even makes sense for her policies.
So you're saying that her hardships in life were the fault of the Tories?
Yeah.
And that you've come full circle?
Yeah.
And that here we are?
I'm just a bit confused because the Labour side seem to think that the only answer to any problem is tax and spend. And to be honest, that's what the Conservatives seem to have been going along with for so long as well. And Liz Truss, love her or hate her, was trying to do things a bit differently.
And
it went again. No, I think it's difficult to say that because obviously she hadn't got her party on board. She did not present the ideas in a good way, and the timing was wrong, and she didn't explain how she was going to pay for tax cuts and for the energy price package. For the energy price package,
the trust of her members to do this.
Well, I mean, it depends if you think that the two best candidates were, put to the membership. The point I'm trying to make is that she's not even going to be able to test out her ideas now. She's been forced to reverse on practically everything, bar the energy price package. So I can't see that she'll be able to get through any of those supply side reforms, which is where you get the growth. So looking at planning, why are we not being able to build homes? Looking at childcare, what regulations are pushing up wages, pushing up the price of childcare there? How do you get cheaper products to people? How do you break down barriers when it comes to business and so on and so forth? If you speak to small business owners in this country, they are worried about how much they are taxed. They are worried about the red tape that takes up so much of their time and adds burdens. They want to grow their businesses. They want to take on more people.
Red tape has not been removed. But wasn't that one of the promises of Brexit, that red tape would be removed if we had Brexit?
Yes.
And actually, there's been more red tape now in place.
There's a lot of red tape, and I would agree with you on that point. But that was one of the things that Liz Truss wants to do, is to remove red tape from businesses and individuals alike. So
I think there's other things that she could have done rather than doing that.
I just think it's lazy for you to say, oh, it obviously doesn't work, because we haven't had any. We actually haven't seen any of the measures done.
Since she announced the mini budget, nobody has seen anything in their life get better. How is that lazy?
None of the measures have come into place.
But why?
Because they weren't planned to. A lot of them wasn't planned to be introduced, by the way, until April.
Exactly, the next financial year.
What do you guys make to all of this at home? Keith, there's no flies on you, Keith. You're saying, Michelle, have you noticed we've now got a PM and a Chancellor who both campaigned for and voted to remain in the Brexit referendum? Yes. Keith, that did not pass me by. It's something that I'm pondering about as well. Do you think that whole Brexit thing is going to be something that might rear its ugly head again? Tell me all your thoughts on that when we come back. I want to talk to you about the future. So dust off those crystal balls, get gazing, predict the future. Tell me what should happen next. What is it going to look like? Is it going to be a general election? Should it be? Oh, are you still with me? How are you feeling? Tell me, and I'll see you in 2.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Ah, goodness me. I wish you guys could see the goings on in the breaks. I'm like a boxing referee, I was just then. Labour Councillor Pamela Assad and Emily Carver from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Metaphorically, they weren't really fighting, and I wasn't really donning my referee shorts and my whistle or anything like that. It was a example. Anyway, right, I want to talk to you guys about the future. I mean, how on earth the Tory party could have gone from where they were in 2019 and their massive seat majority to where we are today is beyond me, quite frankly. But in exclusive polling for GB News, we now see that Labour has commanded a 34-point lead over the Tories. That's 2 points up on our previous polling. Basically means they're sitting at 53% of support compared to 19% for Liz Truss's party. The person responsible for those polls joins me now, which is good, because I've got a simple question for him. Matt Goodwin, we see all these polls, and what? Tell me, because sometimes I see these polls, Matt, and I don't mean to be rude, but I kind of think, so what? A general election's miles away, she says, fingers crossed. Why should we care so much about these polls?
Well, firstly, a general election might not be that far away at all if indeed the Prime Minister is replaced by somebody who perhaps does not have a mandate. They will come under immense pressure to go to the country. But secondly, why do we care about polls? Because polls have a very good record. Contrary to what you may have heard, they've seen a lot of things coming that a lot of our journalists dismissed at the time. Things like the rise of Jeremy Corbyn, the rise of Boris Johnson. Many of the polls were very accurate about the rise of Brexit. So I actually, as a pollster, would defend my industry and say, yeah, there's lots of good reasons to take them seriously. And also, look at the ones today. Look how disillusioned everybody is. What they're telling us is actually left and right, Labour, Conservative, they're not really doing it for a large number of voters today. And I think that's another reason why polls matter. They throw light on people who are written out of the political debate.
And just briefly tell me, what do you think is behind this huge shift? I remember 2019, I ran in that election, and I remember the disbelief and shock many people had, including the Tories themselves, by the way, when they saw just how big their victory was in many of the red wall seats. How did they go from that to this?
Well, a nice short question, the million-dollar question. Look, my theory is this. The Conservative Party inherited all of these new voters after Brexit. It had this unique opportunity to realign the country. It won over those red wallers. It held on to a lot of blue wallers. And then it didn't really know what to do with them. It didn't give them the policies they wanted. It didn't really give them many of the leaders they wanted. And that's come to a head with Liz Truss, who is really quite disconnected from that new, unique Conservative coalition. So it's fallen apart. Working class leavers have left. Middle class Remainers have left. sometimes for different reasons. Some want action on immigration, others just want competency or a better approach on tax in the economy, but they've gone. And in the poll today, the standout figure for me is 9%. 9% of the country say they like Liz Truss. That is lower than Boris Johnson ever had, lower than Jeremy Corbyn ever had. You're basically looking at John Major in the aftermath of the ERM crisis. So, we're looking at wipeout territory. It's something I've never seen before in my life. I've never seen the Conservative Party this weak, and I don't really know how it rebuilds from here.
Fascinating stuff. Something tells me that you are going to be very busy in the coming weeks and months. A pleasure as always to speak to you. That's Matt Goodwin there. Pamana, 9%, he's just saying there, the public favour Liz Truss. I feel like, well, it's not surprising really because, the media have never really given her a chance. Many in her party repeatedly doing nothing but trying to oust her because they didn't really want her. They wanted Rishi or whoever else. So she never really had a chance, but you won a general election. It seems many people polled agree with you. So if I have a general election tomorrow, you're saying about all these people in Harrow, their mortgages, going through the roof. If you come into power, what, my mortgages are suddenly going to come back down again? Interest rates are going to come back down again? Am I going to be all right if I'm in Harrow and worried about my mortgage?
Things won't change overnight, obviously, but I think what will happen is that people will gain trust in the government, and people will gain trust in sensible people leading on economic policy. And what we will have in place is Rachel Reeves as Chancellor, who will actually listen and think before initiating policy changes into the economy, and actually think hard about how it's going to affect people's lives and where exactly the pressure points will be. And I know that the job isn't easy, but 9% for Liz Truss, how can you even continue with this?
Well, I would. If I was Liz Truss, I'd ignore all this nonsense, I'd ignore the polls, I'd ignore all my backstabbing people on my team, and I would just power forward.
But the thing I don't understand is her party voted for her. She won in a leadership contest against another candidate.
But she didn't win the MPs, though. She didn't win the vote of the MPs, she won the vote of the members. So a lot of MPs in that party didn't vote for her, and I can't get my head around why those people don't realise that they're committing a monumental act of self-harm by doing this to their own party for their own interests. It's bonkers to me.
Well, clearly they aren't unified, and I think that what people want to see now is, in this current economic crisis, with this war in Ukraine, with the cost of living crisis, what people want to see is a unified party with sensible leadership at the top, and people can actually trust that their government's looking out for them rather than looking out for
And in your mind, that is the Labour Party. So you're saying the Labour Party is the answer to all of these woes. Is it?
I think it's very difficult at the moment. I think, as Matt articulated there, people are disillusioned. It's extremely difficult for the Conservative administration at the moment. Liz Truss is more of a classical liberal. She's more of a neoliberal, a libertarian. So, for example, she's very pro-immigration. Now, that's in complete conflict with, say, Suella Braverman, and huge majority of Conservative voters are not pro a liberal immigration, or at least really want to clamp down hard on illegal immigration. So there is this conflict at the heart of the government between those who are more liberal on not just when it comes to the economy, but also on social issues and issues like immigration and so on, net zero and whatnot. So there is that conflict. And I don't know how they unify that in time for the next general election, because it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult.
Yeah, and I'm still struggling a little bit to understand how the Labour Party is the answer to this, because my sense, and this is a sense, I'm not steeping it in whatever references, it's just my instinct. I feel very much that a Labour Party is quite, you say it's divided, you say it's united. To me, I feel like it's quite divided, and I feel like it's quite divided among its own ranks over silly things. And I'm going to be flippant, but I think it's important. Just silly things like, what is a woman? Who can say what a woman is? Who can't say what a woman is? Silly things like, who can go stand on a picket line? Who can't go stand on a picket line? They might all sound like silly things, but they reflect, to me, divisions within that party. Also, my sense is that at a time where we would need prosperous growth, bold, pro-business sentiments and policies, to me, I always feel like Labour Party is steeped too much in politics of envy would be anti-business as opposed to being pro-business. Am I wrong?
Yes, I think you are. I mean, I think, my dad owned a small business on our local high street and we supported Labour throughout. Well, actually, my dad voted Conservative when he first came to this country, but then obviously I changed his mind later on. What I do think, though, is that we have an opportunity right now. I mean, I've been a Labour Party member for a very, very long time, and I've seen the party in its ups and down periods. And I've seen the disunity when Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party. And then I've seen what Keir Starmer has been able to do now over the last two and a half years. He's really united our party. He's kicked out those who are causing problems within our party, who, our anti-Semitism issue, really taken that on ahead. He's united our MPs in understanding that we need to be strong on the economy. And this idea that we're not pro-business, I think is completely wrong. There are small business owners within the Labour Party membership and people who want Labour to be pro-business, which is why we came out with the business rates idea of scrapping business rates, because we're listening to business people who own businesses and business leaders across the country. And I think that can be seen. I mean, if you went to Labour Party conference in September, you would have seen big business back at Labour Party conference because they understand that Labour is now pro-business.
Yeah, I think that's true. There were many businesses who perhaps wouldn't have bothered going when Corbyn was in charge. But I think a lot of people may not forget, although some people do have short memories, may not forget that Keir Starmer very much was happy to stand behind the Corbyn manifesto. And, of course, he was very happy to stand on picket lines before he decided to have a complete change of heart now that he's leader of the Labour Party. And he also wanted to reverse Brexit. So it is, despite this polling, which obviously is showing that Labour would win a landslide if there was an event tomorrow, I do think that he still needs to win over a lot of the red wall. I was talking to a cabbie earlier today, and he's one of those who hates the woke stuff, thinks, the illegal immigration stuff is out of control, but it was also a trade unionist. And I'm not sure if Labour will appeal to those however many Union Jacks Keir Starmer stands in front of. They're more sort of, the SDP types who are sick of the woke stuff from the left, but who are, trade union types. It's quite interesting. There are so many different categories of people who will vote in so many different ways. I think that it could be ripe for a new party to come in. Who knows? I asked you all about your crystal balls, Roger. He says he's got his dusted off. He says he predicts there's going to be an election next May. That's quite precise. An election next May, and Labour will win with an overall majority, and then that will enable us to take the country forward towards its inevitable Venezuelan-style future. Pamana didn't like that, Roger. Jude says it is completely the wrong time for an election. The media should give Liz Truss a chance. I've got to say, she's only been in power. What is it now, about 40 days or something? 10 of those, obviously, were paused for the Queen. She hasn't really had a chance, has she? Patrick Christie's is up next. Good evening, Patrick. What have you got for us?
This is the best show yet. I've got Boris Johnson's dad to openly talk about whether or not we should bring his son back. The Monster Raving Loony Party are launching their budget live on air. We're also going to be talking to Jeremy Hunt's mate. Important I get that word right. I wanted to know how Liz Truss felt, so I'm just going to sack someone live on air for doing the job I asked them to do. Challenge Christie's. I went hairdressing and was selling that hair live on air, probably to someone who, well, you wouldn't want to look in their basement, would you? And, of course, Michelle, it's Dog of the Week, 7 until 9.
Dog of the Week, 7 till 9. There you go. Don't go anywhere for that alone. And I can't wait to see what it is that you're going to fire someone for, Patrick. Right, that's all I've got time for. It flies, doesn't it, when you're having fun? Lots of division in my inbox tonight, and I suspect that reflects the country as well as a whole. Emily and Pimana, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your company at home. Have a great weekend, but don't go anywhere. And if you do, take us with you, because we're on the radio and everything now. I'll see you on Monday.
Good evening. Alex Deakin here with your weekend weather update from the Met Office. The mixed picture continues. Sunshine and showers and a breezy day on Saturday. Sunday looking dry and bright for the most part before more wet and windy weather arrives from the southwest. A whole host of low pressure systems and weather fronts drifting in from the Atlantic at the moment. They'll all bring bands of showers across the country over the next 24 to 36 hours. A couple of those bands sinking south this evening, but many places dry this evening, the main exception being across the Midlands and parts of Wales. And then later in the night, we'll see another band of quite heavy rain move across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Ahead of that, could easily see some frost across eastern Scotland, but another pretty mild night with a lot of cloud across the south. A real mishmash again then on Saturday. Could be quite a wet start for Wales and northern England, but that rain should soon scoot away, lingering a little longer in northeast Scotland. Sunny spells will follow, but so will a whole host of showers. A zone of them crossing the Midlands late in the day, more for West Wales and southwest Scotland along with Northern Ireland. Quite a cool feeling day here. Blustery conditions on western coast, making it feel rather fresh. 16 or 17 the high in the southeast and East Anglia, where there will be plenty of showers through Saturday evening, and the showers continue throughout the night over northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. But it does turn a little drier across the south as we head into Sunday, and the showers over northern England, Northern Ireland should fade through the morning, and even across Scotland actually the showers tending to ease off as we go through Sunday. So many places actually dry and bright for most of Sunday, with some good spells of sunshine, and the wind's a little lighter as well. Temperatures 16, 17 in the south, 13 or 14 further north. The wind's starting to pick up in the southwest, however, and behind me here is a developing area of low pressure that is moving in from the southwest and will bring some rain to Northern Ireland on Sunday evening. Wet and windy weather spreading everywhere during Sunday night.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The